Kent Adams here, and I hope you're having a good day. This is a special, and I mean that in a couple of ways, because number one, the fellow who's here, Larry Haskell, who happens to be our county prosecutor, but he wears a lot of hats and has worn a lot of hats. And we're going to talk about his Air Force career, and it's quite unusual. He's one of very few, fortunately, that have had to go through the process of what he's going to talk about today. And so we just kind of actually happened to stumble on this last time you were in, Larry. Remember? And you said, well, I've got a story to tell you one of these days. And you gave me a couple of sentences after the show, I think, and I went, you did what? Okay, so let's talk about first your going into the Air Force.
Sure. So when I was a high school senior, we had a little family thing going on that changed the course of my life a little bit. My parents made some decisions that caused me to rethink what I wanted to do and when, more importantly, I wanted to do it.
Okay.
So about mid-senior year, I received enough high school credits to graduate under the state scheme of things. So I went ahead and took that, and then I joined the Air Force in January of 1972. And went down to Lackland Air Force Base for basic training. And at the time, they didn't have the guaranteed jobs that they do today. So
right.
you were kind of subject to whatever the Air Force needed.
Right.
Well, when I went through, the Air Force needed security policemen. And
so let me guess what you became.
Yeah, exactly
right,
what they
right?
wanted.
Yeah.
But it actually set a course of events into play. That really dictated what would be the majority of at least the early half of my adult life, because they made me a security policeman and I became a security specialist, and they sent me to Germany. And I was over at Hahn Air Base in Germany from 72 to 74, and I absolutely fell in love with the notion of becoming a pilot in the United States Air Force. I was up close and personal every day in my job with the F4.
And said, I want that, right?
I want that. They looked happier than we were. They smiled more.
It's more exciting and more, and probably get the girls faster too, don't they?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know if they got girls or not, but I'll tell you what they did do. They got to fly on the pointy end, if you will, of a very, very powerful airplane called the F4 Phantom. And to see it, to hear it, to feel it every day, and say, you too can do that.
Right.
So that's what I set my sights on.
Wow. So how did you get to be a pilot?
Well, I tried to do it while I was in, but getting the education, working shift work and security was tough.
Yes.
And they do have an age limit. So without a waiver, you needed to enter by age 27 and a half.
Wow.
And in my view,
you were getting so old.
Time was ticking. I was all the way to 20 by then.
Yeah.
So. But in any case, so I did the 4. I got out and I went to school on the GI Bill. And found myself graduating. So I got out in January of 76. I found myself graduating from the University of Washington with a BA in 79. Already had an application for pilot training and commissioning in the spring. I graduated in June. I got the great news that I was accepted in the early summer of 79, and I was back on active duty in August.
Oh, wow. You
great.
Couldn't have planned that better, really.
I couldn't have planned it better.
No. And working with the service, you can't plan anything, you know. But I mean,
never
that's
know.
great. That's great.
Know.
Okay, so you got your training and everything else. Tell me what it was like to start there as a pilot.
In pilot training,
yeah,
it was daunting.
Really.
So I got commissioned in late 79. I started pilot training in January of 1980 at Vance Air Force Base in Enid, Oklahoma. And it was daunting. But I realized, oh my God, Larry, you're fulfilling your dream.
Yes.
This is what you wanted to do.
Yes.
Now you have an opportunity. You have a year-long program that is a direct path to Air Force wings.
Wow.
So did that.
How exciting was that for you?
It was, like I said, it was a lot of emotions. It was the honor of being selected.
Right.
It was the daunting nature of the task ahead. It's not an easy program. It's
can't
designed to weed people out as much as it
Yes.
is to graduate people because of the nature of flying. There's a great saying about flying. It's not inherently dangerous, but even more so than the sea, it's terribly unforgiving of any incapacity or neglect or carelessness.
Yes.
And that's a fact. And you can be doing everything right and still find yourself on the wrong end.
Yeah, because you're not always in complete control, are you?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. So I graduated
Okay.
in November around Thanksgiving 1980, and I was assigned a B-52 initially.
Okay.
Went through training at Carswell for 6 months, early 81. Reported to March Air Force Base for 15 months in D models, and then after they boneyarded the airplane, I found myself up here at Fairchild.
Aha. Aha.
And while I was there
Yes.
for 4.5 years, Ronald Reagan became the president at some point in there, and he decided that
In
he wanted
1980.
He-
81.
81.
Actually, in January of
Yeah.
81.
And
Yes.
he resurrected the B-1 program, which
Yes.
had previously been killed by Jimmy Carter when he was president.
Right.
And so, a completely unforeseen opportunity availed itself for me and others to be selected. If you apply and were accepted to be selected to fly the brand new B-1 bomber. And,
Oh, wow.
I was one of those initial cadre pilots that was accepted into the program.
Now, when you talk about how new the B-1 bomber was, I understand you had an appointment at some point with the number 12 one.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
So
yes.
that's about as early in the process as you can get, isn't it?
Well,
I mean,
I
in the
was,
first dozen?
the initial what they call the IOC for the airplane was a little earlier than I got in. It was 1985. But I was flying the airplane by 1987. I left Fairchild in June or so of 87 and reported to Dyess Air Force Base, Abilene, Texas, for academic training, simulator training, and flight training.
Okay. All right. Are we getting close to the
We're there.
infamous story?
We're
Okay.
there. So my crew, we
Yes.
had hand-picked crews, and we were supposed to fly together, what they called integral crews.
Okay.
We were the first in my class that was scheduled to fly on September 28th, 1987.
And there's a reason you remember that date.
It's like a birthday.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a,
Yeah.
well, for guys, an anniversary.
Yeah.
So yes, so we had an unbelievable tragedy ahead of us
That day.
when we took off that day.
Yeah. Tell me about it. Tell the audience about that, because
Okay.
very few ever go through something like this, number one,
I'm glad.
and to live through it, number two. Okay? Number two, I'm glad you lived through it.
Thank you.
But not everybody did they?
No.
No.
So the Air Force treated the B-1 initially like a faster version of a B-52.
Okay.
And for many, many years in the B-52, we carried members with us, crew members, that did not have ejection seats.
Okay.
What the airplane really is a very large fighter.
Okay.
And you would not put somebody in a fighter aircraft without an ejection seat. So there was a valuable lesson learned, because on that day we had 2 additional crew members with us that did not have ejection seats.
Okay. So how many are flying the plane with the ejection seats?
4.
4. So the 4 normal team is there.
Correct.
And you had 2 more
Instructors.
instructors who did not have ejection seats.
Correct.
Okay.
So, and as it turned out, what we did up front with the pilots was our instructor pilot stayed in the co-pilot seat the whole flight.
Okay.
That was his plan. And then he shuffled myself and my co-pilot in and out depending on the phase of flight.
Okay.
So, for instance, I made the takeoff. I did what we call flight characteristics demonstrations, and then I did the air refueling, and then I got out of the seat.
Okay. To that point, nothing unusual?
Everything normal.
Okay.
In the back, you got an instructor in the middle, and a student, and another instructor in the other ejection
Okay, now
seat.
in the back, are you talking about right behind you or back further?
They're back probably about 10 feet.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a picture of where people are in this airplane.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're up front here by the windows.
Right.
and they're back.
The
There's
four of you.
The three of us.
The three of you. Okay.
And then there's three more a little bit
okay.
back, a little bit forward of the wing area.
Okay.
there.
Wow. Okay.
And two of those are in ejection seats, and then two of them are just like up front, and then one in each crew position is in a jump seat, we call it.
Right.
So when we, after we got done with air refueling, I got out of the ejection seat and I took a position in the jump seat.
Okay.
And my co-pilot got in, and then we entered the low-level route, which is where we fly just under the speed of sound, 0.98, 0.99
Wow,
Mach.
okay.
It's 3 football fields per second that the airplane flies low level. So
I can picture that now that we see football back on TV.
There you go.
Right?
Now that you know what a football field looks like again. So anyway, we were down low level, and the plan was we would fly what we call an en route portion.
Low level meaning what level? 1,000 feet or
600.
600. Oh, okay. That really is low.
It's very low.
For a plane going that fast.
Yeah, it's nearly the speed of sound at 600 feet.
Yeah.
And we're hand flying it at that time.
Okay.
So we did one bomb run, we call it.
Okay.
And then we did what we call a racetrack. And so on the racetrack, we do a 180-degree turn.
Okay.
So then we did a quick seat swap. So my co-pilot got out of the ejection seat. I got into the left seat, strapped in, pulled my pins, took the airplane, and then we rolled around do one more bomb run.
Right.
And then the plan was we would exit the low-level route, fly back to the base, and do a couple hours of touch-and-go landings.
Right.
But we didn't get there.
What happened?
Shortly after we rolled out wings level on the bomb run,
This is at 600 feet.
600 feet,
Okay.
0.98 Mach.
Which is nothing. 600 feet is nothing for a plane that fast.
You'd be in the ground in a couple of seconds if
Yeah.
you pointed it down there. So in any case, I was hand flying, looking at the instruments, and I glanced up and I saw a gray-white color blur just off the nose, kind of angling towards us. And before I could react, before the instructor in the right seat could even say the word bird, it hit us.
Oh, no.
With the force of a cannonball.
Wow. And we know from what happened in New York and so forth that it doesn't take much to injure a plane.
It doesn't. And now there, they went through a relative flock of birds. For us, it was a single bird.
Single bird.
The board estimated when they went out and they looked at the bird activity in the area that it was a 12 to 15 pound American white pelican that hit us. And it literally hit the right wing root and ripped off a big chunk of the airplane from what they call the overwing fairing, because the board eventually found a chunk of overwing fairing with singe marks on it, 17 miles north of where we crashed.
17 miles?
Yeah, so that's about right. We travel about 9.5 miles a minute. So
I mean, it's just hard to
2 minutes.
fathom. It really is, because an airliner goes 400, 350
yeah,
miles?
and they're never that low at that speed, especially.
Right, yeah. Okay, so now what happens?
So after the bird hit us,
And we're talking seconds and fractions of seconds from now on, right?
not quite yet.
Oh, okay.
So at this point, unbeknownst to us, we're going to fly for about 2 more minutes before the airplane will quit flying.
Ooh, okay.
So I immediately, the airplane was doing this ungodly shuddering, and
I wondered,
and just kind of rocking and rolling like nothing I've ever felt before.
Did you feel like you'd lose control completely at that point?
You could.
Yeah,
You felt like you could. So being, sortie 1, my first flight in the airplane, I gave the airplane controls to the instructor,
right,
and I became what I called the consummate co-pilot. I'm running the checklist. So we get the fire indications on engine number 3.
And he's flying the plane.
He's trying to wrestle with the airplane. I'm shutting down engines 3 and 4, fire lights. We had some fire extinguisher ability in the airplane. Nothing in a B-52, but in a B-1 you get 2 shots per wing. So I went ahead and applied those. made the radio call out to center when we figured out what we wanted to do. We were talking to Denver Air Traffic Control at the time. I asked the instructor in the rear. I asked him if there was an airfield nearby that we could set the airplane down on. He said there was nothing long enough.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't very long after that where we were trying to slow the airplane, move the wings forward, because when you slow, you need to move the wings forward because it's a sweep wing bomber.
Okay.
You can see there.
Right.
And so we were trying to get the wings forward.
With the idea that you're going to land at some point, too,
well,
right?
with the idea we're going to slow and climb away from the ground. That was a big thing, was slow the airplane down and get away from the ground.
Give you more space to operate it.
Yeah. And come to find out, it was a futile effort. So as the ground was going by, you talked about the realization.
Yeah.
When it came over me that this was it, it is. It's hard to put into words.
Are you losing altitude at this point?
No, we got up to about 1,400 feet.
Okay.
When the hydraulic pressure was lost.
Oh, gee.
So at that point, I was looking down at something, and I felt this rolling moment, we call it. And then I looked up, and normally when you look out of an airplane that's level, you see sky up here, and if you see any dirt at all, it's all down here.
Right.
So when I looked at it, I saw
a
whole lot of dirt, and I saw a whole lot of sky over here.
Not good.
And I knew that we were in a right bank increasing. And so even though he was flying the airplane, I immediately snatched the stick in my hand and I hit the left rudder, and he already had both of them full stop.
Oh, wow.
So then he and I had a very brief discussion. And when I say brief, I'm talking about 2 or 3 sentences.
Yeah.
That brief, because time was everything.
Oh, yeah.
I was done. He wasn't ready, so I pulled the handles.
Okay.
Which, for a student and his first sortie, if you look back like at pilot training or something, you would never do that. You would never do it without the instructor, commanding ejection.
Right.
But I had 2,000 B-52 hours behind me that day, and I had a lot of left seat time, and I'd had some opportunity to think about these types of situations. Yes. And I was a flight safety officer for a long time along the way in my career.
You knew what you had to do.
And there was a saying that if you're low to the ground and the airplane doesn't do what you want to do, you got to leave.
Yeah.
Because seconds from now,
but without saying anything, he knew you were doing that.
He knew.
And
he knew.
He knew he needed to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, in the B-1, though, we actually have auto eject. Okay. So for any critical phase of flight, now in a B-52, it's every person for themselves.
Right.
But in a B-1, we have auto eject. So if either pilot attempts ejection and that pilot is in auto, anybody else who's also in auto
is going to go.
They're going.
So you don't even have to say anything.
Nope.
Yeah.
Preferably you can. In this particular case, we didn't have the time.
Yeah.
So the right seat rear goes first.
Okay.
The left seat rear goes second.
Okay.
The co-pilot seat is supposed to go next, and then finally.
Okay, but you went first.
Well, I went third.
Third. Okay, so it does still go in that automatic.
Still goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I heard the 2 back seats go.
All right.
So I knew that there were 2 rockets out the rear.
And you would be next.
And then nothing happened next to me. And then finally, in what seemed like a lifetime, which takes only about 2.3 seconds, it got to my seat, and then my seat departed the airplane.
Yeah.
So,
and then did you see the pilot ejection?
I didn't see a thing.
Oh.
After I pulled the handle, the last thing I remember before my seat left was we got a 3rd firelight. So the fire was spreading, and I noticed that 3rd light before I left, and then my seat went. And after that, I lost vision and hearing till I got into till I was in a parachute.
Okay, and that's normal, I would think.
It varies. It varies. Okay. Everybody is a little different, and a lot of it is determined by your flight conditions when you leave. We were going too fast.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we were in
Yeah.
a situation where we were losing what they call the lift vector very
Yes,
quickly.
yes.
Because the airplane eventually crashed 90 degrees of bank,
Okay.
30 degrees nose low. So we were rapidly deteriorating. The board eventually told me that my seat was 2 seconds from out of the ejection envelope when it left the airplane. Doesn't mean you're automatically a fatality,
Yeah.
but it means that
Too
there's
close
an
for comfort.
increased danger of serious injury or death.
Yeah. Okay. So the two in the back that are in the ejection seat.
I met them on the ground.
Okay. Then you
Right.
lose consciousness.
No, I was thinking. It was funny, and I told. I had an interview that was published in the New York Times, talking about how I was thinking about the conversation that the instructor, who was in the co-pilot seat, that he and I had had.
Right.
And I knew it only happened seconds ago, but in my crazy mind at the time, it seemed like it was 100 years prior.
Wow.
I told them that. I said it seemed like it was forever ago, but it was only seconds.
Okay.
And
So you land.
Mm-hmm.
Your rear folks that are in the ejection seat.
They're over here to my left.
Oh, you see them?
I see them.
Okay. Okay. So the three of you. What about the pilot?
So I see one guy and a space and another guy
Yeah.
and then a really big space to me.
Okay.
And so then after I looked over that way, I looked to the right and I expected to see a huge plume of black smoke, which is
Right.
typical of jet fuel when it burns.
Right.
And I looked over there and all I saw was little wisps of smoke and very tiny little brush fires.
Wow.
And I later found out that when the airplane hit the ground, it exploded like a bomb, and all the energy went out in the explosion.
Okay, sure.
And any post-impact fire was basically eliminated by the fact that the fuel was consumed in the explosion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those three guys that were still in the airplane were still in the airplane when it impacted the ground.
Three guys.
Three.
The pilot?
Yeah, his seat failed.
It failed.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so you lost three.
Three guys, yeah. And
But three of you survived.
Three of us survived.
I got to ask, how do you feel about that?
I've had 33 years now to think it over.
Yeah.
You wrestle with a lot of things.
Yeah.
We all three of us we talked, and two of us still talk. There was a tremendous amount of survivor's guilt.
Yes.
There's a tremendous amount of questioning about what you did or
what if?
you could have done differently, or you do that, and it's just a part of
anything like
trying
that.
to get through something like that. We got called up by the board a couple weeks later, and they let us walk the debris field. It was massive. There was airplane parts all over the place, small, most of them very, very small. But it was a years-long process.
Yeah.
So I was the only one that made it back to the cockpit for any length of time.
Okay. Yeah. So what do you do for the year after that, or the 6 months after that? I mean,
Yeah.
Is it the get back on the airplane and go fly again?
It's not quite like that.
Yeah, I mean-
so the way they do it, well, they may change it now. I always couch it with saying, who knows what they do today.
Right. Right.
But back then, they had two boards. One of them is called the safety board.
Okay.
And they're the first to come out. They're appointed, and they come out. They interview us. They tape record the interviews. Their job is to find out what happened without assigning blame.
But what can be fixed
And
how it can be
and
changed.
get it out
Yes.
to everybody else.
Yes. Yes.
So that
and as quickly as they can
Correct.
to prevent more of these.
Correct.
Yeah.
So they did that. We got taken by helicopter to the Air Force Academy Hospital, and we spent 3 nights there. And the first night we were isolated so that they could get clean interviews the next day. So they did that, and then you're grounded during that whole time.
Okay.
And then they have what they used to call the 11014 board, which is the liability board.
Okay.
This is the board now where they can take actions,
Or place blame.
place blame, assign punishment, penalties, and
Right.
that sort of thing.
Right.
I wasn't trained in the law at all. I was a captain in the Air Force. So
That came all later, didn't it?
that came a lot later.
Yeah.
But they told me, they said, well, Larry, you can have an attorney. And I said, I don't need a lawyer to tell you this story. I'm going to tell you the same story I told the safety board.
Yeah, it's
So
what I remember.
turn your little tape recorder
Right,
on there
right.
and let's get down to
Yeah.
it. And I told them basically what I've just told you. And
Yeah.
I said, we flew the airplane as long as it would fly. We weren't doing anything illegal. We weren't showboating. And that was one of the hardest things, because in so many accidents you can look and say, well, that guy was doing this dumb thing, or he was doing that crazy thing.
The,
And
the airplane crash out at Fairchild.
that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
So you look at those things, but
Yeah.
hey, guess what? It can grab you anyway.
yeah.
Because we were on a sortie 1. We were flying at the altitude we should have been at the airspeed we should have been at, and guess what? It can still happen.
Yeah.
But that was, in some ways, it was gratifying because I didn't feel any guilt over, boy, I sure wish we hadn't been doing that.
The what ifs that can just.
But the what
drive
ifs
you.
and the fact that you can be doing everything right and you can still
Yeah.
end up, on the wrong end.
Well, it is a machine, and the machines, all kinds of things, even like little tablets, have their own mind. We all know that, don't
Yeah.
we? Yeah.
Well, so they found that we weren't at fault or
Okay.
anything like that, and they had a big show of briefing the 4-star general at SAC headquarters.
Yeah.
And so they invited me, and I'm like,
nice. Yeah,
what
I
am I
guess.
going to tell the general? He didn't really have anything for me. He asked me how I was doing.
Yeah.
But he took the briefing very seriously, and the Air Force made a decision to enhance some of the leading edge strengths of the airplane
Oh, wow.
with some
Okay.
some
So improvements were made because
improvements
of
were
this.
made fleet-wide, yes.
Yes.
And the other thing is the Air Force, it was the biggest step towards a 4-person jet. After that accident that where we lost those 2 jump seaters, and then of course the seat failed. So they inspected all the fleet seats.
Okay.
They found other seats that were also dead, if you will.
Yeah.
So they repaired the problem, found the problem, repaired it, and then they wouldn't let anybody fly low level after that. In that high-speed, low-altitude environment,
right.
unless you were in an ejection seat. A year or so
That's
later, they had an accident at Ellsworth that sealed the deal on the 4-person crew.
Okay.
They had 4 people that hit a wire near the ground, and they realized then, if they'd had extra guys on there, they'd have been dead too. So the Air Force at that point in time changed the
Wow.
standard crew to 4, and then they just had to make the adjustments in the training.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah. Make an old man out of you quick.
No kidding. No kidding.
Yeah.
So tell me about the first time you're back in the pilot's seat. What was that like? What was going through your mind?
Well,
Uh,
I was good as long as I was busy.
okay. Yes. Yes.
During the times when we had some cruise time, I was
Wandering. Your mind was wandering, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I had a period where, I was 33 years old when this happened. And I had a period where I could go park at a mall. And we didn't have the clickers then.
Yeah.
And I'd be wandering around looking for my car when I came out.
Yeah.
So so
Yeah.
your mind wanders a little bit, but it took a determined effort. I will tell you, it was not easy, but I made it back, and I did eventually upgrade to instructor.
Okay.
And guess who they wanted down at the schoolhouse to teach?
You.
Me.
Yeah.
And whenever they taught egress,
Yeah.
I was the guest speaker.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
and at the time, and I will be perfectly honest, at the time when I would tell that story, I felt like I drank 100 cups of coffee.
Yeah.
I was just, wired for sound.
I can only imagine.
But I said to myself, if one person
Yes.
that hears me tell of this experience
Yes.
is faced with this kind of situation
Flashback to what you said.
and pulls those handles,
Yeah.
and saves their life and the life of somebody else,
Yeah.
then my going through this
Exactly.
is minimal.
Exactly. So how long did you stay in the service?
So that was in 87. I eventually got out in 82.
Okay.
Or, sorry, 82,
Ni-
92.
92,
So
yeah.
5 years later, I got out, and I had hoped to go to the airlines at the time.
Yeah.
And that, they're a cyclical industry.
yeah.
Like right now, it's not a good cycle, right?
Yes. No.
So I caught them on a downturn. So that's why I decided I'd go to law school.
Oh, you became an attorney.
I know.
Okay.
I know. I can't
You
believe
kind of scraped the bottom.
I did.
I'm
I was
kidding.
bottom feeder.
Okay, so where'd you go to school?
So law school was back over in Seattle. I went to, I started at what was the UPS, University of Puget Sound Law
Okay.
School, right day one,
Yeah.
the day it changed to Seattle U. We were still in the old department store building in Tacoma.
yeah.
And so I went to law school for 3.5 years there.
Okay, I first met you, I don't know, what was that, 2014?
14.
And you were an attorney. Were you practicing law here in town? Or
Right.
what?
So I graduated in 1997.
Okay.
I took the February bar exam of 2008.
Okay.
And I applied to Spokane County, and I got a job as a deputy prosecutor. And in 1998.
So you know what it's like.
So yeah.
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 Okay, and then in
So-
2014, you ran to be our county prosecutor.
Correct.
You won. You ran, was it 2 years ago? I can't-
18.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Was
without,
unopposed on that one.
you were unopposed.
Yeah.
That says something, Larry.
Well,
You know, that
I
really says something.
I try very hard.
Yeah.
And I try to hire, train, and maintain a staff.
Yeah.
We try to do things right.
Yeah.
And I'm honest with people.
Yeah.
And we honor the Constitution. We honor the statutory scheme,
Yes.
the court rules, and the rules of ethics. And if that rings with the people, they'll keep me.
Yeah. You don't go on feelings, you go on the law.
That's
Isn't
correct.
that what we're based on?
Well, that's what we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that's the only way to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow, what an amazing story. And I've known you now for these 6 years and never knew that until just like a month or so
Yeah.
ago. when
Well,
you
it doesn't
briefly-
doesn't come up in casual conversation.
No.
Usually.
Yeah, and you're not going out having a drink out at the bar very much these days, so you can't bring it up there.
Never.
You know? So, anyway, thank you
Yeah.
for. Now,
Thanks, Ken.
you sent a video. Are we able to use that?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay,
That was
okay.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
That video I sent, I saw it on YouTube.
And so what I'm going to say to our audience is that you sent a video of another plane that went through somewhat of an experience that you had.
Right, and it was actually they interviewed a number of pilots that did eject.
Yes.
And talked about their stories and about that decision making
Yeah.
process. Yeah, there it is, right there on the TV screen. And it's a video the Air Force made because of their dismay about people making late ejection decisions.
Yes.
And it costing them their lives.
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, I was fortunate enough to realize how serious the situation was, and I made a timely ejection decision because it was hopefully going to affect actually 4 people, not just myself.
Right.
But with myself being the last one.
Yeah.
So-
Okay. And how many seconds do you think you really had left?
Well, they said I had 2,
2. Okay. Wow. Okay.
so that's tight.
It is kind of tight.
Yeah.
Okay. In anyone's daily.
Just
plan,
think about
right?
how quick it goes by. 1001, 1002.
And you've had to put up with me here more than two seconds. So, you know, I mean, how
Not-
dangerous can your life be, Larry?
Not putting up with anything. Not at all.
Thank
Not at
you.
all.
Number one, as I said, say to all of the veterans and those who have served our country, thank you for what you did. Okay.
It was an honor.
I appreciate that. My family appreciates that. We very much support first responders and our military and our veterans here at this station. That's a priority, okay?
I appreciate that.
And I think it's just really important. I have a son who's now a civilian firefighter out at Fairchild. I have a son, grandson, who is starting airborne right now.
Nice.
So a couple in the family. In fact, my son married an Air Force brat, and so yeah, it's important, and I appreciate all that our young people, even at 33, are doing for our country. I think it's important, and sometimes we don't say that enough. So to you and all your comrades and those who have served our country, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you're doing at our county, because prosecutions are up, good things are happening. Some people object because you're following the law, and that's too bad.
Well, if I could make one comment
Yes.
on that. So what I tell people is this, and this is important to understand, what we file in terms of prosecutions
Is a small fraction.
is a subset of what the police send me.
Yeah.
What the police send me is a small subset of the investigations that they actually do, because they fail to find probable cause on many of those.
Yeah.
And what they actually encounter is only a tiny fraction of what's going on in the community.
Yeah.
So if you look at that, you look at the filings that we have, and you look at all those subsets, that is just an example of the magnitude of the crime that goes on in our community.
Yeah.
If you give up on that, you get something like King County.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be that.
No, we're not. We're
So-
absolutely not going to be that.
But that puts it in perspective,
Yeah.
Kent, I
Good.
think.
Well, thank you, and pass along to your prosecutors there, because
I will.
it's a tough job, and your staff that support them. I know it's tough for them, but we do appreciate. We know we often complain about government and workers and all that, and rightfully so sometimes. Okay, usually they're the elected ones, but anyway, but we got some bureaucrats that way too. But the fact is, we've got a good team in Spokane, from the police chief to the sheriff to prosecutor and all those that support them. So thank you very much.
I agree.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you, Kent.
And thank you for
Appreciate
watching.
it.
Have a good day, everybody.